Hello and welcome to the Florida Peanut Federation podcast. I'm Noah Walker with All Things Visual Marketing, and joining me today for your Florida Peanut podcast is Mr. Joel Love, the BMP Outreach and Education Coordinator from IFAS out of Jefferson County, as well as Mr. David Royal out of Wauchula, who is the Nutrient Stewardship Project Manager with the Nature Conservancy. Welcome, gentlemen. How are you today?
Doing great. Thank you.
It's good to have you guys. I know that both of you guys are coming from a fairly large distance to get here, and both of you guys have very specialized knowledge, and we appreciate you coming. So tell us a little bit about yourselves and your organizations, what you do. We'll start with you, Mr. Joel.
Well, no, you've already mentioned I'm from Jefferson County, Florida. That was where I was born and raised, and I live there with my wife Debbie and have 3 children, and I have 2 grandchildren. We're very, very happy with that. But as Noah, you mentioned, I work for the University of Florida Institute of Food and Agriculture Sciences, and my office is located at Live Oak at the North Florida Research and Education Center, Swanee Valley. So I work around 13 counties in this area, which pretty much covers the Swanee River Water Management District. And I spend most of my time in counties that have row crop, not so much in counties that don't. So there's probably out of that 13, there would be less counties than that. I spend most of my effort because some counties don't have much row crop in them. So what I do is, in my previous life, I worked with the Florida Department of Agriculture, Office of Ag Water Policy, and I did BMP enrollment, which enrolls farmers in the FDAC's Office of Ag Water Policy BMP program. I did technical assistance to help educate growers what the BMPs are, and we did cost share, actually provide financial incentives for farmers to do some of these BMPs, or again, abbreviated for best management practices. And then the leadership in that Office of Ag Water Policy at this time said, we need somebody out in the field educating growers that says, you know, the place to put that person would be with the University of Florida, because that's what their job is, education business. So I'm on contract with the Office of Ag Water Policy through the University of Florida to help farmers get these BMPs implemented on farm.
Thanks. Mr. David?
David Royal. I live down in Wauchula, which is in South Central Florida. I'm kind of a unique person. I'm a 6th generation Floridian, and our family has always been in agriculture, and I've been able to work in many different fields. But for the last 9 years, I've been working with the Nature Conservancy as their nutrient stewardship project manager. And what I do is I work across the state. I work with farmers one-on-one with their nutrient programs. And I promote a program called the 4R Nutrient Stewardship, which was developed by the Fertilizer Institute, the International Plant Nutrition Institute, and the Canadian Fertilizer Institute. And it's the right source of fertilizer at the right rate. And what we focus on more than anything, are they putting it out in the right place and at the right time? And our whole purpose is to try to help hold those nutrients in the root zone where there's very little leaching. And the 4Rs have the scientific backing behind them that if these practices are followed, that it helps improve and protect water quality. My job with this started out in Southwest Florida. And then 3 years ago, the Florida chapter of TNC felt like we needed to come up and work in the Spring Shed area. So I spend a week out of every month up here working in the Swanee district. And then this year, we're going to start working the Okeechobee watershed, because Lake Okeechobee has popped up as a hot spot again. And so many people don't realize that the Okeechobee watershed begins north of Walt Disney World. So basically, the lake has become a big funnel all these years with the nutrients going to them. But, you know, the farmers want to do what's right, and they want to protect the land. And one thing that's a little different in Florida than most of the other states across the nation is Florida farmers are multi-generation farms. And hopefully their grandkids will continue the family legacy. So they understand that they've got to take care of the land, because the land's what takes care of them.
That's right. And so both of you guys deal in essentially best management practices. You're working a lot with nutrients. Mr. Joel, you work on the broad scale, getting out and showing farmers what some of these best management practices are. So what does a visit look like with a farmer whenever you get out and look at their management practices?
Well, the first thing you've got to do is you've got to spend time with that farmer and you've got to build a relationship with him.
Mhm.
He's not going to open up what he's doing on his farm because he thinks it's just somebody else looking over his program. But if you can build that relationship, and the best way to build that relationship is another farmer introduce you or somebody that's in the industry that's well respected. I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. When I came up here, I probably wouldn't have been accepted, but I met Joel and I have been working together up here and everybody knows Joel. And that makes a big difference. So we've got to build those relationships. And then believe it or not, the farmers, ranchers and growers will open up to you. They'll ask, how can I do better? What can I do better? Tell me what's out there that can make our job more efficient, because they truly want to take care of the environment around them, because they know how important it is for that legacy to continue on, not just the farming aspect, but for everything. And let's face it, we're facing a lot of pressures in Florida agriculture. I mean, with 1,200 people a day moving in to our state, more and more farmlands being taken for development. And it's kind of hard to turn down the prices that they're paying for the land, but we've got the farmers that are resilient and they're going to continue to farm no matter what, because that's what they love to do. So as we continue to grow more on less, and I know this may be chasing the rabbit a little bit, but so many people don't understand that Florida is the winter vegetable basket for the whole eastern United States. And we're growing over 300 different crops in our state. So we're very, very diversified crop, and we're growing in a lot of areas more than one crop on that acre. Whereas in the Midwest, they're growing one crop of the big grains and then they're done for the season. So we've got a whole different atmosphere here of what we've got to work on. And water quality is the hot topic in the state of Florida and in ag. And I think our farmers are doing the best job out there possible to help improve and protect the water quality.
Yeah, you made a point there. So the point you made was the 1,200 people moving into the state every day. And I don't know if either of you guys have driven through little town of Newberry lately, and where the city limits used to seem like they were way out. They push right up to a few developments that have popped up here in the last 6 months to a year. It's almost like they're farming houses rather than farming crops or hay now, which is a little crazy to me, just driving through it randomly. So you start the visits and meeting farmers with a relationship, building a relationship. And then you maintain that through value of some of the programs and the research that you guys do. Talk to me about some of those programs and the research. You mentioned the 4 R's. What are some other things that either of you guys introduce these farmers to that can be valuable on their farms?
Well, one of the things I try to do is make growers aware of different incentive programs that are out there. And those can be very confusing to growers because there's more than one agency that provides funding for different practices. Sometimes they overlap. Sometimes even I get confused because the program change over time. And so it's hard to stay up with that sometimes. So sometimes I spend a lot of time sorting through all of what's available to the grower and try to point him to the one that helps him the best. Instead of him having to deal with 3, maybe you need to go here, or in order to get this, you need to go to this agency. You need to go to the Water Management District. If you need this, you need to go to the federal USDA NRCS office, or you need to go see the Office of Ag Water Policy and through the Soil and Water Conservation District boards that administer this money for the Office of Ag Water Policy at the local level. So that I spent a lot of time doing that. And I have county agents call me about that. Who can we get this guy hooked up with that needs some help with this issue? And so someday I think I spend more of my time coordinating than I do educating, but that's part of my job.
Education coordinator, right?
Exactly. I wear 2 hats.
Yeah. Well, and that's a big job too. And this year, I'm sure you guys both know it's a farm bill year. So even more changes or shifts in that policy.
Exactly.
And who's getting that funding and how that'll go. Do you foresee any major shifts in how you'll be helping people through the Farm Bill? Anything important into that thing?
Well,
I'm not gonna get into the Farm Bill because that's a whole different
It's a
ballgame.
monster, yeah.
But one thing with the Department of Ag, Ag Water Policy, the BMPs, which is best management practices. I wish they'd call them better management practices because ag is changing so quickly these days. I mean, there's new technology coming out. There's new production practices. And even nowadays, there's old production practices that are circling back around to us. And I mean, we laugh about cover crops. I was sharing with my dad one day about it, and he said, son, I planted cover crops all over citrus groves for years, 40 years ago. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. A lot of the practices are circling back to us. But one thing that I don't think that the general public understands is ag is always going to be changing every day. And I tell young people, I get an opportunity to speak at several colleges that have ag programs. And I get to tell them ag is probably one of the most high-tech industries out there today with the technology that's out there that's going on. So we just need to continue to help because most farmers and growers, they're so busy in the field, they don't have time to stay up on a lot of these new practices or new technology. And I think that's where we come into play when we can spend time and explain it to them of how it works and how it might benefit their operation. And then the other thing that we've got to think about too is every farm is different. What works on your neighbor's farm may not work on your farm. So you've got to work with them to figure out what's going to be best on their farm and what practices and technology pieces that they might need in their operations.
What are, aside from cover crops, you mentioned those, what are some of the other best or better management practices that you guys introduce farmers to?
I think one of the greatest tools out there right now that is benefiting the ag industry is soil moisture probes. Irrigation management, that's the 5th R in my book, is doing the right irrigation practices to help hold those nutrients. But you know, the soil moisture probes, once a farmer or a grower or a rancher learns how to read them, it only takes them a few minutes every morning to look at them and make the decision. Do I need to irrigate? Do I need to fertigate? Or can I hold off a couple of days? Mm-hmm. Or it looks like it's going to rain. I still have enough moisture in the ground. I can hold off and see if it does rain or if it doesn't, and I'm still okay. But you know, with these probes, they can also look at their nutrients moving through the soil. They can't tell what they are, but the salinity tells where they're at. So do I need to add on top of the ones that are already there and just push them farther down? And where the probes play such a major benefit is they help you hold that moisture and those nutrients right there in that root zone so that they can be most efficient to that plant.
Now, how do they have to get out in the field to read these probes, or is it accessible through their phone or through their phone?
They have them through their phone, through their computer, through their iPad. And you just need to find what probe you feel the most comfortable. Mm-hmm. Most of the probes all work the same. It's the dashboards that are different. So whatever company that you feel the most comfortable for, and here again, that they can be cost shared. So really, when you put the pencil to it, you'll save either in electricity or diesel fuel will more than pay for your probe, and also your fertilizer will even help, because if you don't need to put it out, you're saving.
So that's a great management practice, in that it not only helps the crops get the right amount of nutrients, but it helps the farmer be efficient with their resources, their time, and keeps regulation off their back in terms of over use on some of those products too, right?
Absolutely.
Well, great. What other practices should people be aware of that you guys get out and help folks with?
Well, David's already mentioned it several times, but when we talk about nutrient management, when the crop is very young, and I'm going to use corn because that's our big nitrogen user that's planted in rows in the Swanee River Basin and in North Florida, is when that corn plant's young and little, there's not much root system. So if we broadcast fertilizer real early, how much of that fertilizer is that corn plant / root going to see early on? Well, guess what? When we're planting corn late February, early March, what are we getting that time of year? We're still getting cold fronts, so we get some big rain events that wash those nutrients below the root zone before that plant has a chance to get it. So the timing and the placement is critical. Don't put a lot out in planting, a little bit to get the plant started, and then come in there and put a little bit more by the row when the corn starts developing a root system. And then later on, when it gets to be a very large plant, it's pulling a lot of water and it's growing a bigger root system. Now we can do a little bit of broadcasting through the pivot. And what we're doing now, we're comparing placement methods. What is the best way to do that? And we've got a 4-hour demonstration project where we're actually using a high boy to apply nitrogen fertilizer from knee high all the way to tassel, and just seeing if it's any better than fertigate through the irrigation system. And it may not be, but we need to learn that. And is it economically feasible to do it? The equipment, the high boy we got, a $500,000 machine, and farmers have that, but they got one and said, I can't afford another because it would take two and it'd take another person to run that. So there's a lot of challenges we face. I mean, they've already got the irrigation system, so it makes sense for them to use that. The thing that's concerning to me about the irrigation system is, and we haven't brought this up, is that irrigation system is actually being used to apply 50 to 75% of our nutrients required by the corn crop. Well, guess what now? It's not just the irrigation system. It's a fertilizer application device. So it needs to be at the top of its game. It needs to be at optimum distribution uniformity. So when we are applying nitrogen through the irrigation system, we're getting our best bang for the buck. And so we have in place, very thankful for the funding for this from the Office of Agricultural Policy, a mobile irrigation lab that goes out and provides a free service to growers. They put out buckets, capture what comes out of each emitter on the pivot, and they give them a uniformity score at the end of the day. And I give them a chart that they can irrigate by. If the pivot's not doing what we think it should be, call here. Actually go back and redo that pivot, put new regulators, new sprinklers on it, like help with leaks and things like that to make it efficient.
Interesting. Well, that sounds like a win all around for the producer. And sounds like you guys have a whole pocket full of these programs that you can hook them into and help them research as well. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate you for this episode of the Florida Peanut Podcast. We've learned a lot, and I'm sure that you guys have a lot more. Where can folks get in touch with you, Mr. Joel, and then you, Mr. David, if they have any questions about best management practices, the Nature Conservancy, or IFAS?
Well, I'm located at the North Florida Research and Education Center at Live Oak, so I can be contacted there. 386-688-3730. That's my phone.
And that's a nice big center that they have a lot of events and everything, invite the public out so that folks can come out and check out some of the research that they do there. What about you, Mr. David?
Best way to get me is through my cell phone, and it's 863-781-3490. And again, I travel all over the state, so no telling where I might be, but I will get back to you.
Very good. And you deal not just up here in our row crops and crops that we typically talk about here on this podcast, but you're dealing with crops all over the state, the strawberry crop down around Lakeland we talked about, and other fruit crops down. I mean, you mentioned that your family is citrus farmers from 6 generations ago, which is incredible. But thank you guys so much for being here today. Again, this has been the Florida Peanut Podcast. I'm Noah Walker with All Things Visual Marketing, joined today by Mr. Joel Love and Mr. David Royal, both very highly knowledgeable about best management practices for our producers here with the Florida Peanut Federation. So thank you and enjoy your day.